webinar. Today we're talking about it's Wednesday. Is it Wednesday today? Yeah, it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, and today we're talking about, are the Feds really trying to kill the market? Right? What is it? I mean, is this some sort of a conspiracy that they're trying to? Are they really trying to kill the market? I mean, what's the truth? So I want to kind of break this down into something that makes practical sense, and that makes practical sense for us as real estate investors, right? So obviously, when the money supply is cheap, we all like it. When the money supply is expensive, meaning the Fed's raising the rates, we don't like it. Now, we can talk about the CPI index. We can talk about a host of other things. We can talk about the employment, unemployment. We can talk about how the rents affect what happens, how the housing price index affects what happens with what the Feds make a decision. But I want to kind of just take a step back, because when a lot of these things are recorded, and like the title suggests today, are the Feds really trying to kill the market, right? I mean, what is their problem? Why won't they give any of us a break? Right? And I'm asking that question from this perspective because whenever you hear about a rate hike, that's the first thing that comes to your mind. And if you're a real estate investor and you see the rates go up, it would be foolish of you not to at least pay some attention to it. But what is more important is, rather than saying, oh my God, these people are stupid and they don't know what they're doing, let's just kind of think through this for a second, right? The average Joe sitting at home in their underwear, eating, a can of beans out of a Campbell can packet, they know what is better for the economy than the Feds, who probably have a more modicum of sense. Or somebody like me who owns 100, 200, couple hundred houses, or you sitting at home, right? We would be considered, quote unquote, a little bit more sophisticated investors. We know what is better for the economy. Of course we don't, right? So understand, what is the role of the Feds? The role of the Feds is to overall provide a operating environment where a nation like United States can prosper, right? That is the role of the Feds. Now, having said that, what I want to point out is that a lot of the times they have gone a little bit far to the left or the right. I'm not talking about politically. I'm talking about in terms of the economic policies, right? They're not gods. They're human beings. So it is impossible to always make things perfect. Yet, what is the goal of the Feds? The goal of the Feds is always to provide a soft landing, meaning they want to provide, if the economy is going to come down, they don't want it to come down and basically have a hard landing, because that is going to hurt a lot of people economically. So the Fed's policies are always to temper the rise of the market, meaning temper inflation. And if they're basically increasing the interest rates, to kind of temper that down a little bit, so that the economic, even if there's an economic slowdown, it doesn't come to a screeching halt. Right? There was a lot of cash that was injected after, say, the Fed policies after 9/11, the Fed policies after 2008. Now, how we got there and why we got there, that's a different issue. But then the Feds had emergency meetings. So I want to kind of show you guys this, because I think this is this kind of paints a great picture of what the Feds have done. And if you look at the rates, kind of what has happened. So if you look at what happened and where these basis points are for the rates, right? If you look today, how the rates have gone up over this course of time, right? There was a half a point increase. There was 0.75, 0.75, 0.75. If you guys, hopefully you're able to see my screen as I show you guys this, right? And then if we look at the interest rates in terms of historical interest rates, I believe I had a chart here also somewhere. I thought I had it. Let me see if I can find it again. Here we go. Right? If you look at historic interest rates, now these are from 1955, and then look at where the rates had gone in sometime around 1980s, right? This is the Jimmy Carter era. That's why President Reagan came into power. This is kind of where rates were. And then they had kind of come down, they climbed up again sometime around 98, and then they had kept coming down. And you remember what had happened in 2005, 2006. This was kind of the era where the rates were super, super low, right? And then there was a rise again, and again, they came down, and now they're again on the way up. So why do I bring that up? I bring that up because for our needs, as we talk about it for us, so stop sharing screen. For our needs in real estate, how does it affect us? Of course, it affects us because it's going to control the amount of buyers that'll be in the marketplace, the amount of people that'll be able to do refinances, not be able to do refinances, and so on and so forth, right? But whenever somebody says, well, how does it, now, if you're in the mortgage industry, right, the refinance boom was crazy, right, last couple of years because the rates were really low. So if you were in the mortgage business, you're a title company, if you were in a lot of those ancillary businesses, if you're an appraiser, if you were, anybody that was related to that business, I mean, it was a massive boom. If you're a real estate agent, people were buying a lot of property. So it was good times. Now, as they increase the interest rates, so I want to kind of show you guys what the effect is. Now, these numbers that I have 3 sets of numbers, right? One is if I'm buying a investment property. Reason I'm showing you the rate on investment properties is because that's what we deal with on the channel. So that's what I'm talking about. It's 5%, 6% versus 8%. So if I'm buying a property where I'm getting a mortgage for $210,000, I bought the property and I'm using a actual property because I'm in the process of buying a property right now, another property to add to the portfolio that I'm going to make an Airbnb. So buy price is somewhere around $170,000. The fix up price is about 35. I'm using a 40 number, so 210 all in, right? So at an interest rate where I was going to buy the property, I was going to rehab it, and then if, let's say, I'm going to make it a rental. So let's look at what the numbers would be. So this is the rate at 5% at a 30-year fixed sort of a mortgage, and I am not including the taxes and insurance in this. The reason I'm not including that is because the interest rate going up and down, that's not necessarily affecting your taxes and insurance. So I'm leaving that out. I'm just looking at my principal interest payment on the property. Now, mind you, I'm going to have to add that maybe another $400. But I want to show you guys the effect because this is where the effect is so critical. So think about a homeowner who's going to buy that home for, let's just say, for $210. Just assume they're going to buy the home for $210. Right? They may say, hey, I can afford this payment, which is $1,127 payment, plus I'm going to have taxes, $4,000 or $5,000 in taxes, another $800 in insurance. So that puts you somewhere around, say, $1,500 or $1,600. But what happens when the interest rates just go up by 1%? When the interest rates go up by 1%, now suddenly the payment in that particular situation goes up by about $125 or so. Right? So suddenly, that's not so bad if it's up to that number, right? Now, what happens to a landlord, right? Think about it for a landlord. If you say, okay, at this number, right, this plus some, so let me actually put that number down. That way it'll make a little bit more sense. So let's say the taxes on the property are about $5,000. So that's going to be 12,448. So about, say, about another $400 a month, right? Plus you're going to have, let's say, $60 in your insurance. So what does that put you at, right? That puts you at a payment of $1,587, right? So if this is a landlord that's buying this property, they may say, hey, this is pretty good. My payments on the property at about $1,587. I get about $2,000 on the property in terms of rent. So guess what? This is a pretty good deal. I got the property all fixed up. I'm going to rent it out. Great, right? Now, if it's this situation, now what's going to happen is his payment is going to be closer to about, say, $1,700, maybe even a little bit higher, maybe almost $1,800, because now you got to add another $125 to that. So about $1,710 or so, I should say. So in this case, his PITI for the landlord is going to be $1,710, which is this number plus taxes, plus insurance, so on and so forth, right? Now, watch what happens. He's still getting $2,000 in rent. And what's going to happen is he's going to say, well, I'm only making $1,700, man. My cash flow got cut down by about $150 or so every single month. Now I'm not so sure, but let's wait one more step, right? Today, even on a 30-year fixed with a buy down on an investment property, your payment is actually here, right? That's your payment. Now, that does not include your taxes and insurance, right? So what has happened is because the rate went from here to here, now you're no longer up by only a couple $100. Now the difference is pretty stark. $1,500 versus $1,127. So if I add another $400 to it, plus I add another $60, now my payment, instead of being $1,587 on this property, is almost $2,000. So that's how the interest rate hike affects us as investors. So why do I bring that up? Am I bringing that up that, oh my God, you cannot invest? That's not why I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up that when there is a market change, we have to react to it. Either we become the person who says, oh my God, I'm out, right? Which is what most people did in 2008. That's why most people got out investing in 2008. I got into investing in 2008, where the market kept going down until 2012, and then we rode the wave up, right? But most people got out. And so why I say that today is that the Fed's job is not to kill the market. What they're trying to do is they're trying to temper the inflation. Now, in my opinion, they're like, oh my God, you're killing the buzz, because here you are, keep raising interest rates. So my cash flow on some of the properties is going to go down a little bit, right? But what that's going to do is, till now, what was happening was the property prices kept climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing, because in a market, at least like Chicago, the cash flow relative to other markets has been so ridiculously high that it was basically, it was getting a lot of people to come and invest in the market. Now, today, what happens is we have kind of gone to the other extreme of it, which is that because the interest rates have gone up, what that's going to do is that's going to slow down the amount of people who are interested. So this property today that I was talking about that I have under contract, well, guess what I'm going to do? The rate went up a little bit. I'm going to go back to the seller and say, hey, listen, the rate went up. I didn't know when I made the offer. I did not know that the rate was going to go up. I need another $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 price reduction. Right? Why? Because it's going to cost me a little bit more. Now, the seller may say yes, they may say no, and at that point, I can decide whether I'm going to buy the property or not. But this is a property that's probably worth about $310,000, $315,000, that I'm buying it for about $170,000 or so, and then I'm going to do about $30,000 to $40,000 in work, and I'm going to go ahead and do an Airbnb. Now, I'm going to do an Airbnb on this property because if I look at the actual rent in this particular area, this plus if I add the taxes and if I add the insurance on the property, my payments alone on the property are going to be close to about $2,100. Now, at $2,100 in this particular area, maybe I can collect $2,300, $2,400 for that property. And that's, I don't know, but maybe that's pushing it a little bit. But $2,300, I know I can get. So I'm not going to buy a property, even though I can be all in this particular property for zero in, because I'm buying it for $170, fixing it up for about $35, $36, and then I'm going to refinance it. And as long as it appraises somewhere around $300, which I'm very confident it's going to, I can get my cash out. But what happens is this, that if my rent roll in that area is somewhere around $2,300, maybe even $2,400, and the amount of payments I'm making is close to $2,100, I'm not sure. That's not a very good cash flowing property. Now, here is the compensating factor, right? Which is important as the market changes that we have to understand, right? A lot of you guys that follow me, that follow what we do, you've heard me. We buy properties based on three things. Number one is cash flow. We want plenty of cash flow, anywhere from $400 to typically $500 net cash flow after all expenses. So in this case, I don't know. It's really, that cash flow is not what I want, what I'm happy with. But I don't have any money in the deal. I would truly be in the deal for zero out of pocket because the property is financed. Now, number two, we always want equity in the property. So do I have equity? If I'm all in the property for about 5 to 10 or so, and the property appraises out, which I feel very 100% confident property is going to appraise, even in today's market at minimum 310. I bet you it comes in at 330 or 340, but minimum 310. So now I have a good amount of equity. So that's good, right? I'm trying to hit 3 home runs, but on the first one, not so much. On the second one, equity is there. The third one is called my DCR, which is debt coverage ratio. Now, my debt coverage ratio in this particular case, if my payments are $2,100, my rent collected is about $2,300 or maybe $2,400 in this particular area. Now, I'm being very, 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 very conservative. Generally, I tend to be about $100, $150 lower in when I do the numbers in terms of what I think I'm going to get the rent-wise. Generally, we tend to get way more rent. But off the top of my head, I feel very confident about the number, so I'm just going to go with that number. So my third thing that I always want to hit is I want to hit a ratio of 1.33. What does that mean? That's DCR, debt coverage ratio, which is net operating income divided by principal and interest on the particular property. So in this particular case, my numbers are going to come in a bit tight. So then why would I want to buy the property in today's market? Well, here's why. The reason I want to buy this property is because in this, number one, this is an A area, meaning this is a very aspirational and a very, very nice area. It's great close to the highways, easy to get to. It's a great super suburb of Chicago, and it is a place where I would love to own another 20, 30, 40 of these houses. So the reason I'm going to do it is because the other thing is I can do an Airbnb in this particular property. And I know if my rental is going to be about $2,400, with almost 95% or 98% of certainty, I feel I can get $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 in terms of gross revenue on this particular property, right? The reason I'm doing this. Now, why do I explain all of this and how does the Fed rates affect us? The reason Fed rates affect us is that as they ratchet up the rates. Why are they ratcheting up the rates? They're ratcheting up the rates because without getting too technical into the CPI and all that kind of stuff, consumer pricing index, right? What they're trying to do is they're trying to tamper the inflation that they see, that they feel. Now, your opinion, my opinion, may be something different. Of course, we're going to look at it in a very microcosm sort of a way, what is going on with our own lives and what is good for our self-interest. But the Feds does not make a monetary policy for what is good for you or what is good for I. The monetary policy is made for what is good over time for people. Right? And a lot of times what we think about is they're not looking at, okay, what is happening today? They're looking at they're trying to predict the future and make monetary policy so that it adjusts to the future. That is the reason why the Feds are adjusting to the way they are adjusting in terms of the monetary policy. Now, I can't say today, is this good? You can't say if this is bad. Now, a lot of people will say, well, oh my God, this is horrible. Well, because I was in the mortgage business and I'm not doing so many loans anymore. Well, that's not why the policy is good or bad. The policy, you can only say whether a policy is correct or it is not correct when you have time in history. 5 years from now, we can look back and we can say, hey, listen, that policy generally for the economic health of the country was good or was bad, right? So basically what you have to think about is this, that if you were sick and the doctor puts you on some medicine that makes you feel horrible, right? Makes you hallucinate. You don't feel yourself. You basically feel sick. You feel dizzy. But if the ultimate effect of that medicine is that it gets you better, it gets you in health again, you went through that temporary pain, and so you had to take that medicine, which felt horrible, right? It's like people go through cancer, right? Where what are they trying to avoid? The effects of what the treatment does are absolutely horrible. And some people say, oh my God, that's what kills patients. But, like it or not, it has a long-term effect where a lot of people are obviously go into remission and hopefully they're cancer-free. So as long as you go into remission, you become cancer-free, now we will tend to forget the effects and we say, well, I had to go through that pain, but at least I'm on the other side. What I'm trying to say is this, that when we look at the effects in 2023, from all the indications that the Feds have given today, and a lot of times the markets go up and down based on the indications the Feds give, and the pundits are going to debate whether what the Fed chair is making a comment. Each word, they're going to basically go and analyze it, that what is in the person's head. But if you understand human psychology and if you understand how basic economics works, is that the Fed or any monetary person that makes the monetary policy decisions, they're going to make the decision based on where things are. Meaning, back in 2020, when in March of 2020, we were in the first stages of Corona, or what I forget, it was 2019 to the 20, I believe 2020, when we were in the first stage of Corona. What happened? Suddenly they had to take immediate action to make sure that they injected a lot of liquidity in the market. They dropped the rates to make sure the numbers were, the economy didn't go in a free fall. And because the United States economy didn't go in the free fall, that helps the rest of the world, because since we are the number one economy, the rest of the world depends on it, and there are going to be repercussions around the world. Now, over time, what happened is there was too much money supply that came in the market, so the interest rate has spiked. And now the Fed is reacting to that to try to temper the market. The reason I'm saying what I'm saying is that a lot of times the pundits would have you believe that they know what's going on in the Fed's chair's head because of the words that he said today. Yet, what was said today at the Fed meeting is an indication of what they are thinking today. That is not an indication of what they may think about it when the next time the rates are adjusted at the next meeting. So what my point being is this, that nobody knows where the numbers are going. The Fed's intent is never to go destroy the market. There is no such conspiracy. If there is a conspiracy, the conspiracy is, how do we have a healthy economy? If there's too much inflation, then how do we temper that? And if the economy, they feel that is crashing, then how do we uplift the economy? By adjusting the interest rate either up or down. So when I ask that question, what is the Fed trying to do? Are they trying to kill the economy? No, they're not trying to kill the economy. The whole question is whether you like it personally or I like it personally is not the question, right? Because if they had kept the interest rates down, the property prices would have kept climbing, and that would create another different problem. And hence, they feel that cooling the economy and adjusting by increasing the interest rates, that is better for long term for all of us as a group. Temporarily, maybe none of us like it, but in the long term. So I don't feel that if you have properties where you have long 30-year mortgages, there's nothing to worry about, right? If you have properties where maybe you're in the middle of it, as long as you bought the property at the right number. Now, who gets hurt today? Well, who got affected today by today's interest rate hike? Well, if you're in the market, housing market, and you're going to buy your first home, right? You had said, well, honey, we're agreeing to a $2,000 payment. We think we can afford that as a couple. Well, guess what, right? Each interest rate hike is going to make an incremental difference in your payments. And maybe 8 months ago, you could have gotten the same property for a payment of about $1,500, $1,600. Now today, it's $400, $500 more that you're going to have to pay to be able to get into that same exact amount of mortgage. That's $400 more, right? It's almost $5,000, $6,000, depending on where you are, more for the year, each year that you're making in payments. And that may disqualify you, or some couples who may be right on the edge of what their ratios are, that may throw them to a point where they may not be able to be homeowners. And the interest rates, and the rents are still higher than we have ever seen in history. So they're between a rock and a hard place, because a lot of the landlords have been continuously increasing rent because they feel that they could. right? There's a lack of housing supply, and this is something that will affect people. Now, on the other side of it, if you're an investor, right? If you're someone like me, if you're a part of the group, right? How do you get affected? Well, you get affected in two different ways. Number one, if you're trying to refinance a property and you want to keep it as a long-term rental, right? This sort of a small hike is not going to make that big a difference. But the hikes haven't been small, right? If we look back in 6 months, the rates have gone literally from 5% on a commercial loan I'm talking about, right, up to about 8.5. So what do? Well, what we do is we adjust. So today, if you are an investor, right, what you're going to do is instead of going to a large commercial bank where you get a 30-year fixed rate, you should be looking into the small banks that even today, even with today's economic terms, they're willing to give you rates. They're willing to give you a 6 point something rate. By something, I mean is anywhere from, say, 6.5 to 6.8 rate, right? And that is available. Now, that's going to be based on a 2 or 3 year balloon, right? Maybe a 5-year balloon, but I don't think they're going to do a 5-year balloon. I think they're going to do a 3 to some banks may do 5 to 7 year balloon, and they'll do a 25-year AM. Right? So that may be a better position for you to be in. What I'm trying to say is this, that you can be one of 2 or 3 different people, right? You can be that one person that basically doesn't care what is happening, doesn't pay attention to the market, overpays for the properties, still is way too excited. And guess what? You're going to head straight basically down the drain. You can be the second person that's, oh my God, I'm depressed. Life is over, right? You can be that person and says, oh, it's not possible today to make money. Guys, it doesn't matter if the market's going up. It doesn't matter if the market's going down. Somebody is making money, depends on which side of the equation you're on, right? You understand that whenever somebody gets foreclosed on, somebody's getting rich because somebody's being foreclosed on. It is not a human problem. It is a problem of finances, right? And so it just depends which side of the spectrum you're on. So for us as real estate investors today, what we have to realize is we're going to have to make more offers. Now, when you make more offers today, you're more apt to get more deals as long as you are making offers. Why? So this is something important, right? A lot of times you would think that, well, I make more offers and a lot of them are getting accepted. If a lot of offers in today's market are getting accepted, you're paying too much. Right? If the seller is not rejecting your offer and he's not coming back 10, 15, 20 days later to say, hey, are you still interested? You're paying too much for the property, right? That is it blank, point blank, because there has to be pain that the seller has to feel. And then on top of that, you have to keep making sure that you're not overpaying. So what am I saying, right? You're going to say, Andrew, this doesn't make any sense. It will. Let me explain, right? What I mean by that is this. Let's just say if you make 5 offers on properties and 2 or 3, boom, got accepted, even though you felt that you made a low ball offer, right? You may want to really, really, really thoroughly check your numbers, right? Because what should be happening is the seller should be going, oh my God, no way. I'm not selling it, right? You're ridiculous, right? Markets come down, but not as much as you think. And then when the property still doesn't sell, maybe a month from now, maybe 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, maybe a month and a half from now, they should be coming back with you and you should be beating them up on the price, right? You're not trying to be mean to them, guys. Just understand, right? If the interest rate for the same property here, that at if I want to make sure that my payments are somewhere here, right? And they don't go up, even though my interest rate went up, well, guess what happens? Instead of being all in at 210, I need to be all in that property at about 170 and 175. So instead of paying the seller 175, I should be paying the seller 140. Why? Because the interest rates went up. See, because if the interest rates went up, the prices from investing have to come down, right? That's the only way you can compensate for interest rates. So in a market like today, right, you have to compensate for the interest rates. Otherwise, you should not be buying, right? Otherwise, you're overpaying for a property. So this is really, really, really important to pay attention to, or you're going to sit on the sidelines. Guys, the best times to get in is not when everybody is getting in. The best times to get in to investing is when everybody is getting out and everybody is scared of tumultuous waters, right? That's where you truly see, the boys from the men. And today, the market is about studying the market, about understanding where we are, not getting yourself, and this is important, please, for God's sake, do not get yourself into long flips. By long flips, I mean our flips that are difficult, $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 flips, where it's going to take you 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 months. Why? Because the market is shifting. The pricing is going to shift. If you're going into a flip where in 3, 4 months, boom, you're going to put it back on the market and sell it, you're fine, right? But just understand, you have to pay attention to the numbers. So what I mean by that is this, that if you are in a market like Chicago, if you're in Cleveland, if you're in Philly, if you're in some of these markets that would be considered the Rust Belt of America, right? In these markets, you really have to double down. And if you're buying in C and D areas, your numbers are going to be off, especially in C and D areas. You're going to have to sell the same property 2 or 3 times, because not that you won't have a buyer demand. There's an immense buyer demand. The problem is going to be is buyers will not be able to afford your properties because they simply will not qualify because they get outside of their ratios, right? Just because the interest rate has gone up. So this is absolutely critical to pay attention to. If you're doing rentals, beat them up. I mean, beat up the sellers. You have my permission. Right? Because that is what is needed, right? It's time again. The property prices have gone up too much. Now it's time to beat them up, get the property prices down, and buy these properties at the right number. If you're doing Airbnbs, right, the numbers are still pretty good. Airbnbs are a lot more forgiving in today's market, but don't be like me. So there's a property that I was going to buy, and I'm going to wrap up here in a second. And not actually buy, I bought the property and got it all completely done, almost furnished it all, and then guess what? Get a call from the town, hey, you can't do Airbnb here. Now, I knew it, that the town does not allow Airbnb. We have all done it at times, right? This was my very first time, I'm just kidding, right? What I'm trying to say is this, right? That is not the town's fault. That, guess whose fault it is? Me. I rolled the dice. Fortunately, right, the neighbor basically called the town and say, oh my God, this guy's going to do Airbnb. I get the call and they're like, Andrew, it's your property and you know better, right? I'm not going to mention what town this is, but anyways, so my point being is that if you're going to do Airbnb on this property, it will make money hand over fist. That's why I'm buying the property. But when I'm buying it, I'm 100% aware. Now, mind you, I can also flip this property, right? I'm not going to get as much. I'm not going to make as much. But still, there is a market because this is a very strong market. So to wrap it all, the feds are not trying to kill the market. The feds are trying to provide a soft landing. You may not like it. I may not like it. We may have difference in opinion, but that is what they are trying to do. And that is what the goal is. Hence, they're raising the rates. It's time for us to adjust our strategies, to do some changes, look at some seller financing, look at some subject to properties, look at properties where you can basically do modifications with the banks. Guys, every time a market changes, our job is to find a solution. When life gives you lemons, you got to learn how to make lemonades. Having said that, if you're not a part of the Burr Cashflow Investors group on Facebook, make sure you join. Bring your friends, bring your family. When you join, we're going to enter you into a drawing. The next drawing is going to be a couples cruise. So each time somebody joins, you get to have one chance. If you invite friends, family, invite 30 people, you get 30 more chances to be able to win. The last prize was a full set of appliances that we gave away last month. This time, it's going to be a vacation for 2, you and your spouse, your wife, significant other, whoever you want to take it. So having said that, guys, thanks a bunch. Have a good day. Talk to you soon.